And Craig Smoke.
Kendall Kaut, 365 Sports Basketball Analyst. Big 12 released their conference schedules, both men and women. And Kendall, one of the first things I thought or saw was when he popped up about that Baylor would not be playing at Allen Fieldhouse for the first time in a long, long time. But there's a lot more to dig into. Kendall, thanks for your time. Paul and Craig, Smokey as well. Was that the first thing, though, that really wait a minute, where's that game at Kansas?
I think it was for me, Smokey. You know, with so many teams, you don't know exactly how it's going to unfold with what rivalries they'll protect. But for me, really sad to see that Baylor, Kansas won't be protected.
Yeah, I think it's really hard to do that. And Kendall, I think the schedule balances out well for all 16 teams, but they kind of made the same mistake with Farmageddon, didn't they?
They did, Paul. And there are different teams. I think you can say, hey, you have to protect these teams. And I get why, off the cuff, you might think, well, we'll protect KU, K-State, and we're going to protect Baylor, TCU. But when you really look at it, the hot take I would give is that K-State, KU is not the end of the world rivalry in basketball. It just hasn't really been there. Jerome Tang obviously brings K-State hopefully to a level even higher than Bruce Pearl got K-State matching his highest finish with an Elite Eight. But when I look at it, I just don't really feel like you had to protect that rivalry. And I felt like, the Big 12 is about to name itself the All-State Conference or the Good Hands Conference or whatever else for $3 million a year per school. They've told the media at the Big 12 tournament, unless you're two people per school for this year, go sit in the rafters and be lucky if binoculars can show you what ants are doing on the court. If the conference is hit up this badly for money, why in the world would it decide that the thing to do is to get rid of your most marquee games that you could sell? I mean, you want events. The whole point is the NFL to me is so popular, and Ethan Strauss has mentioned this before, because the events matter. And I don't know that the event really matters if you're saying, well, we don't have to play Baylor KU twice a year. Maybe we don't have to play Arizona KU twice a year like it's going to happen. So I don't like it.
Kendall, any other thoughts on just the draw that Baylor got as far as, the opponents that are out there? We know the home and away, Arizona, Utah, TCU, Houston, Cincinnati, and then a sprinkling of home only, away only. Anything else pop out that was of interest to you?
I think, Craig, it's just kind of a reminder that although it's exciting that the Big 12 still exists, nobody did a better job in realignment than 365 Radio, Craig. At some level, I'm not going to be as excited to watch some of these games originally. I'm thrilled to know Baylor, Arizona's coming. I think UCF was a more exciting game than I expected. I thought the UCF color commentator who called that game on ESPN Plus did an excellent job. But some of these games, even with 16 teams, you're like, I remember doing power rankings and I was like, I don't have any idea about Utah basketball. Mm-hmm. Or, even teams you thought you might know about normally, if you only have to keep track of 10, you're like, well, who's still at Cincinnati? Who transferred with the portal? And so I know you all cover the sport day in and day out, both football, basketball, national stuff. It's just so much harder to keep track of teams, both with the portal, with more one-and-done recruits now. Though we wonder if everybody wants to do that, since you just better be from France if you want to get drafted now, yeah. I guess. But it's just a different sport now. And, different can be good in a lot of ways. I'm happy the guys are getting paid. I'm happy, David Kay's got a great job now. But 16 teams is a lot of teams to get used to. So maybe that's also a good claim that the Big 12 doesn't need to go to 20, and the SEC and the Big 10 don't need to go to 20 or 22 or 24.
Yeah, I mean, I know people get excited about, adding, but, I'm sitting there, particularly after doing the preseason football rankings, I get to about 10 or 11, 12. I'm like, there's 4 more teams to learn about and try to sort in here. It's like crazy. It's like going to 20? Hell no, I don't want to do that. I mean, that doesn't even feel like a conference at that point, but I also know they're not really looking out for our best interest and what we're looking forward to. So, yeah, I'm with you, man. 16 is a lot of teams to try and know, much less sort out and predict what they're going to do.
Absolutely, Craig. I got to the end, and I remember thinking, is Bryce Thompson still at Oklahoma State? Then I had to spend 10 minutes Googling it. Then there were no articles about it. Then I was like, well, yeah, I guess there probably aren't articles about it, because the guy who thought about writing the article got frustrated when he got to Team 11 and was like, screw it. I'm just going to say, the faithful in Stillwater are excited for a new coaching transition. You can bet the boys in Oklahoma will be ready just like the Thunder, and then you hit all the buzzwords and you're good. So, yeah, it's not good. I don't know if we have to divide into north-south again, east-west, good hands versus mayhem conference, whatever we'll be covering in the future. But that's where we are with insurance, I guess. I'm sorry. I don't want to be the insurance conference.
You either have not slept in a long time or you're on something, because you are absolutely rolling today with us. We appreciate it.
Yeah. Kendall, NBA draft last night, of course, it continues on today, but Jacoby Walter on his way to the Raptors, Yves Missi on his way to the Pelicans. I think that makes 11 current NBA players for Baylor right now, doesn't it? And do you have any feelings about those fits, or is it just one of those things that the NBA draft is so hard to even project?
Very hard to project, Paul, but I do like the fit for Jacoby. Looks like the last I saw, Davion Mitchell will stay in Toronto. I don't know if there was any update that was like a move through move, because I always try and check when I make an NBA take about, is somebody else going to get moved again? But I'm excited for Davion to go there. I think it was good to get out of Sacramento. Him and Mike Brown, I don't think the trust level was quite there at the end. Davion, a professional, always is playing. But as it pertains to the draft, I think that's the perfect spot for Jacoby. Rebuilding Raptors team after they've traded OG Anunoby. I think they're looking, Grady Dick, former KU player, is still there. But there'll be opportunities for Jacoby to play early, which is great. Yves, I think, is, although drafted later, the better prospect. And so I think he's going to be good in New Orleans. But as it pertains to that team, they're trying to win right now because of that market size. And you wonder about Zion's health. And so if Zion misses some games, that gives him an opportunity in the front court as well. We'll see what they decide to do. I think they're going to hold on to Brandon Ingram. They're going to compete to win. So I think that's a good situation for him, and I think he's going to be a really, really good pro. And so I think it's nice that he's going to a good team and not just a bad one that doesn't know what they want to do.
This segment with Kendall Kaut from 365 Sports Men's Basketball Analyst is brought to you by Richard Carr Buick GMC, Richard Carr Motors on Loop 340 off Imperial Drive in Waco.
Kendall, when they won the national title, that obviously checked a big box of things the program had accomplished. And at that point, I remember thinking, like, what have they not done yet at this point? And, like, maybe win the Big 12 tournament, something like that. But they didn't have a lot of great NBA representation. And I don't know that always matters, per se, if you're winning where you need to be winning. But, you had guys kind of hanging around. Taurean Prince has been around for a while now. But these last few years, I was spitting out some of the stuff last night. 4 straight draft with a pick is a record. 4 straight first-round picks, that's a record. 2 players last night in the first round, that's a record. They have been on fire the last handful of seasons when it comes to producing NBA stars. Just what are your thoughts on that development for the program, and your thoughts on what they can utilize that with in terms of recruiting and just continuing to build on that?
That's, I think, ultimately the most important thing for most of these guys in recruiting. Luckily, basketball, especially with where Baylor's NIL budget is, and with the SEC and Big Ten not flooding the zone quite yet and saying we're going to spend as much, is that these schools can at least still compete in basketball. I've been really dour about where football's going to stand vis-a-vis the SEC and Big Ten, but I think the Big 12 is still going to be in a really good spot for KU, Arizona, Baylor, Houston, Iowa State. And so when I look at those teams, I think what really behooves them is if they can keep competing. And as you mentioned there, all those NBA draft picks, it's easy to say, hey, you come to Baylor for a year, you can be Keontae George, you can be Jacoby Walter, you can be even under the radar and be Yves Missi and become a first-round pick. Hey, we go all the way back to Davion Mitchell as a lottery pick as well. And now it all the way back makes me feel old, but if you're 13 years old when Davion Mitchell's playing, that's somebody you grew up with. And then you're thinking that's the guy you want to emulate because you probably watched a lot of basketball during the COVID season. So I think that matters a ton because the number one thing for these guys now is who gets me to the NBA? How do I get drafted as early as I can? And how do I get out of school as fast as I can? Good or bad, that's what these kids want. And then I think on top of that, how the guys want to come back to Baylor all the time. The vets always come back, whether it's Pierre Jackson, Jared Butler, Adam Flagler's back this week. I think that really speaks to the culture of the program. And then even for Flags getting an NBA deal and for Jared getting his second deal with the Wizards, just so many guys they can point to, whether it's all the way back to, Quincy Miller and Perry Jones. It's just a legacy that allows them to bring guys in, make it feel like a family atmosphere. And that's also how success begets success for Scott Drew after he's been there now for 22 years.
Yeah, you made a great point about how they come back. They show these group pictures. I think I saw one. Was it? Did you mention Flagler? He was back. There's always somebody back, whether it's back when they had the team that made their first really big run in 2008 or even recently. So Kendall, and I know there's 16, But with all of what's happened with the portal up until now and where things are the dogs still the dogs with Houston, Iowa State, Kansas, Arizona, Baylor? Am I forgetting somebody? I know Texas Tech and I know K-State will be a part of the mix too, but am I forgetting somebody?
I think those first five you mentioned, Smokey, are clearly the favorites in the conference, even with K-State getting Coleman Hawkins from Illinois. With what Texas Tech got in the transfer portal, I still think those five are a little bit better on paper. I don't want to insult LJ Cryer's mom. I always enjoyed talking to LJ Cryer. We got into it on Twitter a little bit. But I think that maybe Houston takes a slight step back more to being team 10 as opposed to team 1 to 3 like they were most of the season. But I think between KU, Baylor, Iowa State, Arizona, and Houston, this is the year where the Big 12, I think, can believe we'll get 2 Final Four teams.
Kendall, about that K-State team in particular, they're, a lot of people, like Baylor had a great portal haul. Of course, Kansas did, Arizona, like all those. But have they gone a little bit unnoticed in what they've been able to do when you talk about Accor and Coleman Hawkins and Doug McDaniel just alone?
I think they have a bit, Paul, and obviously we're big fans of Jerome Tang. Austin Carpenter, I know quite well, is their director of player development. So excellent staff they have in Manhattan. I think Coleman Hawkins coming in as the last major piece in the portal probably made K-State go under the radar. But I think that team wasn't that great last year on paper, talent-wise. I think they just achieved very well because they won so many close games, which speaks to good coaching, right? They won almost every overtime game they were in. I think they won every overtime game they were in. I was at that Baylor K-State game in Manhattan, and I still have no idea how K-State won that game. But I think the team last year was not that good. But I think this team will be much better. But if that much better is, their team 25, I think that's still a pretty big gap from what Baylor, KU, Houston, Arizona, Iowa State can be. But I think there is a gap between what K-State and Texas Tech can be and then what TCU or whoever else you rank next. And then I have Utah 16th, but I don't feel confident in my 16th pick as we make our jokes again about ranking all 16. But I feel confident in saying those top 7 are good.
So you, when you're asked to do that 16, this is what I've done the last couple of years. Although this year, for some reason, in football, it kind of melted together for me. Do you start on that? Maybe even start at the bottom. Well, you have your first 7, but start at the bottom and then you kind of work yourself up, or do you just let there stare at it for 3 or 4 days and add a team or 2?
That'd be the smarter way to do it, Smokey. I started at the top where I was like, okay, I know these 7 are good. And then I started saying, who do I think in my head's next? And I got them all ranked. And then I had my list. And then I went, oh, my God, I've ranked 15 teams. Who have I forgotten? And then I realized, oh, wait, I don't know why, but I forgot to rank West Virginia. And then I was like, well, geez, I think they're better than Utah. And they might be better than Oklahoma State. And then I was like, okay, now I got to renumber this whole list. And then I was like, okay, do I just rank them 16th and get lazy? And I was like, no. These West Virginia fans will come at me and say, do you even know who's on Utah's roster? And I'll have to say, until I started Googling and watching YouTube videos, I didn't. So I couldn't get in that fight online, so I had to go back and re-rank my list.
Last thing, what have you done lately to anger the state of Oklahoma?
Smokey, I haven't done anything to anger the state of Oklahoma. I do want to credit Oklahoma for not hiring a baseball coach in the middle of the night from TCU for years. And then watch as he told everybody that it was an offensive question and a selfish question to ask if he was taking the Texas job, then take it the next day.
Oh.
And so all the jokes I made about Oklahoma becoming the next Texas A&M of the SEC, I want to apologize to OU because Texas A&M could never lose that title and will always be the Texas A&M of the SEC.
Oh, dear God. You're the best, man. Thank you very much. Appreciate you, buddy. Appreciate it. Have a great summer,
appreciate
Kendall.
it, fellas.
Kendall Kaut.
That was
Where's